I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Creep is over. There was murder in your eyes, but it was baby murder. Sorry. This movie, Andy, Creep. This movie.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Well, I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. I over on CinemaScope, one of our other shows that we do that's part of this family of podcasts. I talked about mumblecore a few months back, and so I watched a lot of the Duplass brothers, their indie, low budget, simply produced types of films, and we also talked about how in that realm, we were talking about like the different. Did it ever cross into other genres or anything? The whole mumblecore movement, and they, what Mark Duplass jokingly said is, as they started dabbling in horror movies, is he called it mumble gore, and this is definitely not a gory movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is fun to see that they were starting to think about how can we take this same sort of aesthetic, this real low budget indie vibe and indie feel, and make this work in horror. And I think that they found the perfect tool to do that with, being the found footage aspect as it tied into this film. And I had a lot of fun watching it. I thought the two actors that were watching did a great job kind of carrying the film for me. And so it worked. What about you?
Having watched all of the Duplass brothers movies, is there a movie that is more hand-to-glove perfect for Mark Duplass than this one? No disrespect intended, but my God, does he own the creepy factor?
Yeah, he really does. He is very creepy in the way that he played his character. It was, but that just goes into the nature of the weirdness of people. And I think that's what he was really latching onto this with this character, is that, I think it was either him or Patrick Brice who plays Aaron, and also they co-wrote it, and then Patrick directed it. They said something to that effect of like just this nature of people, and how when you're interacting with a new person, you're kind of reading their signs and trying to figure out what sort of person they are, how to kind of navigate them, and they're probably doing the same of you. But like when it starts crossing the line in, personal space, like invasion of personal space, probing too deeply, questions that come up or things that are said that you're like, it throws you a little bit. And I think that's what this film does really well, to create an unsettling vibe over the course of it.
It's actually really, to that point specifically, I think it makes a really interesting choice, which is to start the movie, the setup of the movie. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. Like, it's an hour and 15 minutes. Like, it's a very short film.
Yeah.
It starts with the premise being that Duplass's character Joseph calls Aaron, Patrick Brice, and says, "Hey, Brice responds to a want ad, essentially saying, I need a day of your time. I'll give you $1,000 to just come video me. Just turn on your camera and follow me around." And so that's the setup. And the premise we learn early on is that Joseph is dying. He had cancer. He's in remission. Now he has a brain tumor, and he's dying, but he's going to be a new dad. And so this video project is him documenting his day for his child, right?
Yeah, his unborn son, who's
very sweet setup, right? I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
To set up the creepy vibe and yet be inside of this like heart forward project, the very first thing that Joseph asks Aaron to do is join him in the bathroom so that he can video Joseph taking a bath, right?
Right.
That is that is a level of intimacy on many levels, not the least of which you just met this guy and you're going to be in a room with him while he's taking a bath naked and doing his thing. But two, he's doing this to essentially act out his experience of taking a bath when he was a kid with his dad, when he was a baby. And he's miming that action. So here we are in what is a deeply unsettling social scenario that also is so earned because, of course, we get it. Like anybody who's a parent or a child of parents probably understands this relationship between, father and child, especially unborn child, right? Like that's an earned thing, and yet it's one of the creepiest things that happens in the movie, given the context. I thought that was a wildly good choice to start the movie.
Yeah, it's very unsettling having tubby time with Joseph.
I'm glad you brought the name of it in. I forgot that it was tubby
with
time.
Aaron. Right, it's so funny with Aaron filming it, and the idea of that just it plays in such a funny way because as the audience we're laughing at the kind of the absurdity of this situation of Aaron walking into this and immediately saying, "Hey, this isn't going to be the, trust me, this is nowhere near as intimate as we're going to be by the end of this day." Like Joseph keeps promising, immediately he meets Aaron, he's like giving him a hug and saying, let's just start off this way because we're going to be like best friends by the end of it. And it just kind of keeps building, like every little thing. And so by the time, in short order, we're at tubby time and we're watching him, and it's sweet. I mean, he mentions he wants to do this like the movie My Life, which, Michael Keaton, it's the exact same scenario. And so if you'd seen that film, you kind of get a sense as to the tone that they're wanting to kind of have here with him kind of creating these videos for his child. And I mean, I guess you just have him say that and you can immediately picture what his goal is. But he sets up this thing with tubby time and explains it. And then he starts miming it out. And that's when suddenly it kind of crosses this line for me. Like, this is just extra weirdly uncomfortable now because he's imagining there's this little kid in front of him and he's like, let's wash your hair and let's do your little tootsies. Ooh, this one stinks. Ooh, this one's tasty. And and I just, it was really funny to watch Mark Duplass go through the motions of this because there were times I was like, this almost feels like too improv. Like they were just trying to push it to some level of uncomfortable absurdity. But then I'm like, it also perfectly fits exactly what they're trying to do. And so that was the thing. Is like it ended up fitting in like the most uncomfortable of ways as we're watching them have this bath time together with Aaron filming and Joseph pretending that there's this little baby in front of him. And then going from that to maybe I'll just end it all and like submerging himself under the water to act like he's going to kill himself.
Just trying to keep it light, man. Just trying to keep it light. Well, and that's the thing about the movie. Like Mark Duplass' character Joseph is on a spectrum, and in the middle is authenticity. Like he's a super authentic guy early on, and we get in the bathtub, and it moves toward eccentric. So at one end, fully eccentric, and he bounces between authentic center and eccentric a lot in the beginning. And then as the movie turns, he goes to the other side, which is straight up malevolent. So the eccentric malevolent spectrum is not one that you would normally build for a human character. But that's where Mark Duplass is in this movie to me. Like he is, that's his journey, is moving from like authentic to deeply malevolent. And, the fact that he starts that as we learn more about him and the movie sort of doles out through action and their relationship, more and more data points to lead him toward this malevolent character. And then we get the phone call with between Aaron and Joseph's sister, who he had been portrayed as his wife, but his sister saying, "You need to get out of the house right now. There's something wrong with him." Then we get a sense that something's really, really wrong. But the other thing I want to talk about is how interestingly the movie plays with, like, I think intentionally trying to set us up to believe that there is a question about who is the malevolent character here. Did you dance with that at all?
I only danced with it once, and I didn't think that if that was something that they were really going for, that they pushed it enough. And so I was questioning, like, how far down this road were we meant to go as the audience? You know, and it was the moment when Aaron drugs Joseph with the Benadryl, and you see him in the background, like, kind of pouring the drugs into his drink and mixing it, and then that whole conversation, then he's passed out. And that was the only time that I'm like, oh wait, are they setting up a switcheroo for us where it's actually Aaron all along is this serial killer? And then no, it wasn't. And so that was one of my frustrations, is like, it went down an interesting road there, but not very deeply and not for a very long time, to the point where I was like, okay, I guess he was just like, there's nothing where he's ever even getting Benadryl. Like, it just suddenly is a thing. I'm like, was he carrying drugs around with him this whole time?
Totally out of the blue. Out of the blue. And it made me wonder in the moment, just knowing how the movie was made. I mean, shot in a week, very run and gun. And like, it made me wonder if that was Brice in the moment, just pulling drugs out of his pocket, like as an artifact of improv. I just felt so out of the blue. And I did find myself in that scene wanting to see the movie take that turn. Like, I thought that would have been interesting to me, because the setup was deeply convincing that, Aaron was the victim here in this charade. So I thought that was interesting. So that is one of my two problems with the movie, is the drugging. And I'm 100% with you. It's like a half-assed tease of, that angle. We'll get to my second one in a minute, because so far I like the movie, right? So far I really, really do. Yeah.
Well, so then do you want to go that direction, or where do you want to talk about performances, or what do you want to talk about?
Well, so I'll just get it out of the way then. So the movie's moving along just fine, and it's building intensity. And then they get to the sort of climactic event in their time in the cabin in the woods together, where he comes downstairs and it's that lit by the camera POV, and you have Mark Duplass standing in front of the door with Peach Fuzz, the wolf mask that he's talked about earlier. And he starts doing that weird dance, and then Aaron loses it and attacks him. And then we hard cut out, and now we're not in the thing, and we have the exposition dump of I had to have my car towed, and now I'm in bed. And from that point, the movie slows down so much that it feels to me like it totally derails. Like, I am less provoked by the scariness of Mark Duplass sort of taunting Aaron, and I feel like the movie lost its way. And that's my fundamental problem with the entire arc of the film, is the way it resolves until the very last scene, which I like a lot.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that whole bit? We move with Aaron back to his apartment, and that's how we wrap up the film.
Yeah, well, and you're right, because we do have, it builds to that moment. This is right after we're getting this sense that, he's drugged. This is when he's drugged. And then Joseph's phone rings, and it's his sister, who we've thought all this time is actually his wife. And Aaron grabs it off of him, runs into the bathroom, answers it, and talks to Angela. And that's where he finds out, you need to get away. My brother, is having issues. That was, I had some issue there, because I wanted a little more out of her, as far as like, he's dangerous or whatever. It felt like you just need to get out of there. And that is a point that I get frustrated with where, and I know it's a battle, especially in storytelling in film, where it's like, you want to be careful with having an exposition dump, but you also want to, when it's one character talking to another character, you want to have them giving enough information so that other character has a sense of what's going on. And it always frustrates me when somebody's just like, would you just trust me? You just need to leave. Just leave. It's like, okay, but like, am I in danger? You got to get out of there. Okay. But like so that's always a little frustrating for me. So that conversation could have been a little more for me. And that led to then the great moment when he comes out and suddenly sees that Joseph's gone. And that's what leads to him freaking out when he hears that I was just talking to Angela. He runs downstairs, and that's when we have that great shot you were talking about where he comes down the stairs, and you've got that pretty terrifying pose that Mark Duplass is in, standing in front of the door with the peach fuzz mask on, and he's just shaking his head no and whatever. And that worked. Then that attack happens, and it ends suddenly, and then we cut to the footage of Joseph dragging giant garbage bags up a hill. And so we're like, oh, okay. So who's filming this and what's going on? And then that's when the exposition comes in, and it's like, okay, it did go in a weird shift, and it was a little disappointing that that's the direction that they went. It's not, I can see in their heads at the time where they were trying to come up with something that would make sense. I mean, we're only 2/3 of the way through the film. We need to have something that can extend it to that short runtime of 1 hour and 15 minutes. And so I changing location, I don't have a problem with changing location, although the cabin was fantastic, but it does give us a shift in the relationship as far as the way that suddenly things just felt a lot less dangerous. And it's weird because we know that, or as we watch, we find out that Joseph is stalking him. He's creeping around the house and he's slipping things in through the windows. And there is some definitely stalker creepy elements that are happening here. And it doesn't help that when Aaron calls the cops, he literally never found out any information about this guy. And so can't give him anything but his first name. I don't even know where he lives. Like he has nothing. And so that was kind of interesting, and you're right. It builds to a very satisfying conclusion, but it also just kind of took the steam out of where we were going with things.
And I think, I think I had less of an issue, though I still have an issue with the get out of the house conversation. The bigger, I think, challenge that I have with that section of the film is that all the exposition happens with Aaron talking to the camera like it's his diary, or you know what I mean? And that was not the intent of the project. I don't understand why he was, they never gave me enough to understand why he was motivated to keep recording himself, right? I get that there is motivation somewhere as a video documentarian that he would want to do that. I didn't believe every time he turned on his camera in the middle of the night and recorded that he had his bed camera on the bedside table and was constantly giving us exposition.
Pointed at him,
right? Like that wasn't the agreement that we made in the beginning of the movie. And I don't think the movie convincingly changed that agreement for us. That could have been something that they did, but they didn't.
Yeah, if he talked about the fact that, I want to get this on film because the police don't believe me and I need to have some evidence to show them or something, we could have had some logic discussed as to what was going on, but it never happens. And because of that, it ends up feeling like, we're losing track with the, like you said, the motivation for us to be filming the way we are. And also, just think about this a little more. The fact that they in the script, they let Aaron leave this premises puts us into a situation where potentially Joseph is losing his ability to control the situation of killing someone, right? Like at this point, like how does he know that Aaron isn't uploading footage to YouTube? Like how does he know he's not sending stuff to someone else? Like it just seems like there's potential for the discovery of what Joseph is doing to be so much easier when he's not controlling it in the location of the cabin.
Right, right. And if that's not the case, if we are to believe that Joseph's sociopathy, right, like psychopathology, is that he wants to toy with the victim, I don't think that case was made convincingly. It sort of feels it accidental. Like it feels like Aaron got the better of him, and that should have been the end of the story, right? Like how does Joseph know where Aaron lives?
Yeah, right. Unless he's just an incredibly good tracker or internet person who
I guess
knows
it's possible he had the keys to the car. I mean, maybe at some point he got in the car and got its registration. Like maybe that's something we can retcon.
I guess. Yeah, because it's not like he's only in the cabin for less than 24 hours.
Right.
It's not like he ever is going to sleep over for the night and Joseph has this chance to pull his wallet out and look at his driver's license or anything. So there's never that opportunity. So it does make you wonder, and it starts pushing you because so many horror movies do it. Is there something supernatural about this guy? And it's not a film that ever goes down that road. So you just, as the only other alternative, you kind of lose your sense as to, okay, I guess I just don't really know how he does that.
I think that last part where he's taunting Aaron in his house, it feels to me like we need to get, we really, really need to get Aaron at home because we have an idea for a great shot. And that shot is when Aaron gets up in the middle of the night and he gets his like bat or whatever, and he's like looking around the house, and he moves out of frame moves across the glass door right as Joseph steps up to the glass door, standing full height, watching him. And as soon as he comes back, he ducks and rolls out of frame, right? And that's a neat and sinister shot of stalking, like straight up. It's great. And I could not help but get out of that sequence as an audience member and think this entire thing is happening because they love that shot.
Yeah, which it certainly feels that way a little bit, where they wanted to play with the idea a little bit, and it just it did give them some moments, but it just never fully gives them the full. It loses its steam, like we said. We had so much great tension in the cabin, and suddenly when they're separate, and I mean we do find out that Joseph somehow also has access to Aaron's place, because at one point he's in there filming Aaron sleeping, right?
I assume it's because he has the keys.
Well, however it is, I mean, did he go out and get copies of the keys at some point? Yeah, well, I guess
because Aaron never got his keys back, right?
And he never got his keys back. Right, and he never. Well, then how does he get into his place?
Well, maybe he has
extra key.
Yeah, like there's there with reasons. Like I feel like that's an area where I'm filling in those blanks. Like after seeing the movie, and I can say maybe they just want to trust me as an audience member that he'd figure out how to get in his own apartment or his own house.
Sure. Yeah.
And that does fill in the blanks of how maybe Joseph's able to figure out where he lives because he has the keys. He could get into the car. He could do all those things. So I'm loosening up on that.
Yeah.
But
does it open a plot hole for you where we don't get a sense? I mean, after the phone call with Angela, if I came home after having that call and having my keys disappeared, presumably I know who has them, I'm probably going to want to change my locks as soon as I get home.
Right. And wait a minute, Andy. Wait a minute. hold on, step back from the mic. We have at one point, he is screwing a new deadbolt into his door.
Right.
That's the scene that closes that plot hole. So how is Joseph getting in and out of the house? At this point, they've attempted to close the pothole, and yet it's still open, and that's the hole through which Joseph is crawling.
Yeah, because we only see that done on one door. We don't get a sense of other doors really with this place. It's possible, or a window or something. I mean, we know that at least the bedroom door has bars on it, and that Joseph had kind of slit the screen, broken the window or something, and reached in through to drop that DVD through the window. But yeah, I don't know. It sets points up that become frustrating when you think about them too long or try to navigate the realities of the situation.
Yeah. And it's harder too, I think, because the vibe of the movie is strong, right? I really appreciate what they're doing in this movie. I think it's great. And I think they were able to capture with, two guys and a camera and assorted crew, a tight movie that deals with trust and deception in human interactions and the dangers of meeting strangers through like want ads and like the impact of isolation and manipulation and what this guy is like. They actually are tackling kind of a lot of issues in this relationship, and it would be a really interesting stage play too. The fact that it ends with such a strong commitment to the bit of pathology in Joseph was perfect for me. I really liked the ending at the park.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because it plays really well. It builds in an interesting way the whole idea of like, I just want to talk to you one more time. We'll do it in a public place. It's at this park at noon, middle of the day, and it's like this park on the edge of the lake, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this theoretically safe space, but and that's what was interesting is then you have Aaron deciding I'm going to film it anyway because I want to have the interaction captured in case something weird happens, I guess. And so he sets the camera up in his car to film it. And then you have that reveal of Joseph in the peach fuzz mask creeping up behind him with his axe and then killing him. Broad daylight. You hear the sound of somebody with like a chainsaw or some sort of tool doing some, cleanup at the park. But obviously Joseph is comfortable enough to do this in broad daylight, not really expecting any of the houses around the lake. Nobody's watching this interaction. Nobody is filming the interaction other than the camera that Aaron has filming. And like there are potentially people driving by, there are people doing yard work, and nobody sees this happen in broad daylight. And that's, for me, the thing that is really unnerving and also just really reliant on Joseph feeling that comfortable to do this in this place and just not have somebody accidentally or casually happen to notice what's happening.
And weirdly creating lore. Like he's wearing that peach fuzz mask. He's creating the lore of his own like future horror character, like this is Jason and, Freddy and Peach Fuzz, right? Like,
right.
And we just get to see who he is first. I thought that was really interesting. And I think that is a thing that this movie does differently. We were talking in our pre-show about what makes the movies most interesting is when they do something differently than you would expect. And that's the thing here, that this guy is so broken that he has no issue doing what he needs to do and allowing that assumption of publicness to be any sort of protection to fly out the window. And I thought that was cool. I thought that was great. And it's a great like single shot, and the sound of the axe going into his head, that like decisive thunk from a distance is really interesting. So I was back in the bag.
Yeah, and I think it works for me because I mean, you got to just have balls to go through with that in broad daylight at a public place like this. And that was interesting. If anything, diminished it a little bit for me, especially as far as you were talking about, like creating his own lore of this Peach Fuzz, killer, is that we cut to him, like a smash cut to him at the car, meant to be like a jump scare of Joseph without the mask as he sees the camera, right? And he's like grabbing the camera and everything, which is fine, but it also means that he walked away from killing him, and then presumably also in the public space takes the mask off and then goes over to the car, which removes that sense of the lore that he would have been trying to create, because he now is revealing who he is,
Well, and you really want to remove the lore is from there. We go back to him actually executing this same plan with somebody else, and we see his open cabinet of all of the other people that he's done this to, and all the videos that have been taken of him, doing this exact same thing. Nothing is new about this engagement. Yeah,
which I wrote a note about, like, we've got to have the murder wall, like the killer's record of all the people that they've killed. And it's one of those things that is a little tropey as a way to just show us, the audience, just how far this person has gone, sort of thing, Yeah. I mean, it works. It's a shortcut to just kind of give that to us. But at the same time, because there were so many in there, starting in the video days, it's like VHS, and then it leads to the DVDs. I was like, surely somebody has started figuring some of this out by now. And are we saying that none of these people who call him and say, hey, I'll come up and film you for a day, they haven't told anybody where they're going? Like, we're assuming a lot with this.
None of these people are missed.
Yeah, like for the setup of this story for us to buy in once we see that cabinet. Like, I get it. We're following Aaron. He has an ex. He seems kind of a loner and everything. They have kind of that personal conversation at the pancake place about just their lives and everything. And I'm just getting the sense that Aaron doesn't really have anybody in his life right now, so he probably didn't tell anybody.
But what about Kyle and Eric and all of the dozens?
And like, is Joseph, if he's having that same conversation with somebody and they said, oh yeah, I told my wife I'd be back, I got to get back, and she's calling me right now, like, is he just going to drop it and just let that person go? And if his sister Angela is concerned about him doing these sorts of things, like, why hasn't she reached out to anybody to talk about the things that she's afraid her brother might be responsible for? Like, it ended up setting more questions in my head. Now, I haven't seen the sequel, so maybe we start answering some questions there, but it does end up, it does make it a little more far-fetched. And, maybe in the scope of horror serial killer, that's fine. But I wasn't quite sure. I was thrilled with that, the murder wall reveal.
I need a hot second. The perils. I have somebody who's locked out of my house. I need to go let them in. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I have returned.
Hello.
Where were we? More questions than answers is what we
Yes.
were saying.
Yeah. Well, okay. So obviously it leads to a lot of issues. I guess the question that I have, though, is how does it work for the characters for you? You know, we have that last phone call that Joseph makes to Aaron, and it is this plea, like, I just want to meet up. I felt like we had a connection. There's this sense of loneliness that he's pitching there and kind of this depression and everything. And I'm just curious, despite all of our issues, that the way that the story shifts, do we find that it ends up working still for the characters and the way that they end up playing so that we can buy into that ending?
I think that is that is the principal question, right? Because does the movie work as a narrative?
Bless you. Bless you.
Does the movie work as a narrative arc is one thing. The character arc, it does work for me. Like the characters, by the end, when we have that final DVD and Aaron is talking to the camera again and says, I mean, look at this guy, and turns back to his eyes, to Mark's eyes or Joseph's eyes frozen on the screen. I'm with him. I'm like, yeah, give the guy a shot. He's just a lonely guy who needs a hug. Right. Yeah. So they tricked me. Right. That's exactly what they want to happen, I think.
Yeah. Well, likewise, I found it to be interesting when after Joseph kills Aaron, and then he's now reviewing the footage that of the killing at the park and just kind of watching it through again. He is questioning, like, isn't it interesting that Aaron chooses to sit that way and doesn't turn around?
Never looks around.
And it has to be because he was actually a good person and believed that I was good and that I would never do him harm. And because of that, he's my favorite. And that was such an interesting reveal for him also. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I mean, despite my issues, I end up finding that these character beats with Joseph and Aaron ended up working for me. And even with issues with the kind of the change of location, I ended up liking the journey for the two characters.
Yeah, I'm right with you. Right with you. I think this movie, that is the sleight of hand of this movie, that by the end of the movie, they can give me something to attach to that makes this, less of a single watch experience. Like I can see going back to this film. I can see sharing it with others who are into found footage. I can see recommending it. Some stuff that's really strong in there.
Yeah. Is there, out of curiosity, like, because the whole premise of this particular season, we each picked particular series that we wanted to return to, along with some new series. This was one that you wanted to return to, and it's the only one. You just picked this particular film. Is there a thing that drew you into returning to the found footage world that you were getting out of this one?
That I was getting out of this one?
Yeah, I mean, you picked this one for a reason. I guess I'm just wondering, like, did you hear something about, like, the premise that made it intriguing to you as for your pick?
Apart from the fact that it was a Duplass thing, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm in the bag for Mark Duplass. I think, and I think you doing the mumblecore, us doing the found footage, and sitting in the dark doing the epistolary series. All of those things kind of came back together to have me thinking about found footage. When I was reviewing our list, I was just thinking about what are some other movies that we could use, because I really am intrigued by the entire kind of, motif, right? The entire thing. And I think this movie is interesting, like shooting it from Aaron's camera perspective. It does something different to mumblecore, right? As you said in the beginning, like the whole idea of making a mumble gore movie is, I think, really fascinating. Like it, and the fact that it works so effectively for me overall.
Yeah.
What did you think of the camera? I mean, of the found footagey parts, right? Because that's hard to do. There's a lot of running. There's so much foresting, handing the camera back and forth, all of that stuff. How'd it play?
I enjoyed it. I thought, I mean, they found a great premise for the cabin sequence to have the camera running all the time. Like the idea of, I want to hire a documentary filmmaker to follow me for a day and just capture everything. Like that was a great premise for found footage. Like I was in the bag for all of the reasoning and everything there. It does shift, as we've already discussed, as you get toward the last part, and it was harder to buy into. And I even was asking myself in that last part of the film, would they have been better off just not doing this found footage, but just doing it regular? And, Aaron was there filming, and maybe we're also cutting to the footage, periodically, but it doesn't have to always be done that way. And inevitably that becomes, I think, a frustration with some of the found footage. It's like, I always go back to Cloverfield with the guys, like, he's filming and everyone's like, why do you have the camera on still? People got to know, man. People got to know. Yeah. Like that kind of becomes the inevitable logic for found footage. It's just like, I'm capturing this because people have to know. And I think I could have bought into this one so much more in that last third of the film if Aaron just said something like, this guy's creeping me out. I just need to capture everything about him in case I need evidence in some capacity. Since I don't have his last name or anything, I just need to have something that I can show people if this goes bad. And like that, something like that would have just cleared it up.
And that what's funny about it is he does that, right? That's essentially what he says as he gets out of the car to go sit on the park bench. And
yeah, right. At the very end, correct.
At the very end. And I feel like that was a choice to make earlier. That was a choice to make earlier in the movie and set us up for everything to follow, because he kept turning the camera on and for not much of a reason.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it was interesting. I mean, I enjoyed Patrick Brice. I enjoyed Mark Duplass. Both of them, I thought, came up with an interesting story and performed it well. Like I bought into both of them as these characters.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting looking at kind of their inspirations for this. They've both talked about how they really like these character-driven dramas that they call are two-handers, where it's just really focused on two characters. And they reference specifically My Dinner with Andre, Misery, and Fatal Attraction. But then they also mentioned the fact that apparently both of them have had some very strange experiences dealing with Craigslist over the years, which is funny. And I suppose looking at Mark Duplass, maybe that's where something like Safety Not Guaranteed came from. But there is this sense of the weirdness of interacting with people through want ads that perhaps does lend well to this type of story.
I really like that. I struggle because I wanted to believe that there were more want ad related movies than there
right. are. Yeah, that was a disappointing thing. I would love to have more of those. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to just ask you about the poster. If you looked at the poster, and I'm on Letterboxd, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the poster in general is, I think, great, and you can tell that the frame that they pulled from the movie, knowing that this movie was shot the way it was shot, I'm not sure that they would have said, "Oh, we got to make sure we capture this shot and then use it in the poster." Yeah. But man, did that work well for them. That sequence of Duplass standing backlit by the porch light at the very top of the stairs is harrowing, right? That's setting up a really threatening individual. And I'm curious your take on the way the movie sells itself compared to the way the movie ended up, hitting for you.
Well, I think that they set it up. I mean, they sell it well with images like this because, I mean, even in the film with that image, it's effective. And it's at a point in the film where it's the end of the day. Aaron is getting ready to go. He's assuming his 8 hours of filming are over. And it's kind of this sales pitch from Joseph to, no, come in and just have a drink. I'd really love to just, chat with you a little longer. It's kind of like that last conversation that anyone has on a date where they're like, oh, just come up for a drink, and it's always the debate. How much am I really in this? Do I really want to go that far? And it is a beautifully shot moment because it's so creepy. It's just haunting with that silhouette of Joseph standing on the top of the steps with that light immediately behind him. And you just have no sense of this guy. And it's such a haunting image. If I were Aaron and I were looking at that, I'd say, I'll send you the footage. See ya.
Right. Totally. That's exactly it. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I interrupted you. What were you going to say? That's all right.
Oh, I don't remember. Oh, I know what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So this one of the things with mumblecore and this style of film is it can sometimes feel improvised, and they definitely did that through this, where they were kind of working on the story over the course of it, just coming up with scenes and everything, different versions of scenes, different endings, trying to figure out what is the story going to be. Were there any points for you that felt maybe it's gone a little too overboard as far as the improv?
Okay. It's really hard to armchair that because I feel like if Mark and Patrick were here, they would say, of course, that was the least improvised part of the movie. But the sequence where they're having their bourbon after this, they go back into the house and they're sitting at the bench or at the table. Yeah. And he says, turn the camera off. And then we hear the conversation about what Mark did to his quote wife. Right. And it just felt like, he's making that up as he goes along. He's just trying to make up the worst thing that he could do. And that entire dinner sequence or the drink sequence felt a little funny to me.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. For me, it really, I already talked about tubby time feelings. I was like, are we crossing the line here? But it really boiled down to his conversation when he first shows Aaron the Peach Fuzz mask, and he tells him the story of Peach Fuzz and does his little Peach Fuzz dance and everything. For me, it was on such a line where I really felt like Mark Duplass was about to start laughing at the absurdity of what he was doing with that silly dance and everything. I'm like, and he's lucky he has the mask on because I couldn't tell, but it just felt like he's about to cross the line. And that for me was the one. Yeah.
It's so hard because you're talking about that. Yeah. And these movies in general, and I think we've run into this before where you're watching one of these mumblecore movies and it comes so far like off script, you can feel the improvisation. And as an audience member, not only do I come out of the movie at that moment, I start getting embarrassed for the performer. Yeah, like if this were a school play, how would I feel if I were watching go through what they're doing right now? Yeah. And that's kind of the line that I didn't feel like the movie walked it that much. And these guys are very good at what they do. Yeah. And also, there are moments where the nature of this kind of filmmaking makes it hard.
That's the line we're with, but it still is fun film worth watching for sure. Had a great time with it. So. All right. Well, we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Mark Fabian, I
think it's Roy Spiegler. That was my guess.
It's just a collection of letters.
It really is.
Music by Mark Fabian, Roy Spiegler. Music by Mark Fabian, Roy Spiegler, Vortex, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Okay, is this me?
Now it's you.
Okay. I need props.
Oh, dear.
All right. Yep, another fan mail. Oh, this one's a doozy. Apparently, this podcast is the soundtrack to their soul. Oh, yeah, they're also convinced we're destined to be together based on the fact that we both enjoy and celebrate the Oxford comma. Oh, look at this, a scrap. They sent me a scrapbook filled with pictures of me from the internet. He also included a lock of his hair. Did not ask for this. Oh, and here's a hand-drawn map to my house. This is surprisingly accurate, but still creepy. Ever have that feeling like someone's a little too invested in your online persona? They've memorized your podcast schedule. They know your blood type. They've written fan fiction where you two elope to a secluded cabin deep in the everdark woods of Scandinavia. At True Story FM, we get it. We understand the fine line between admiration and obsession. That's why our merch store is a safe place for all of your darkly humorous, slightly unsettling movie and podcast tie-in fashion needs. Show your love for complex characters, twisted plots, and the occasional uncomfortable laugh because you're still thinking about that Rusty's European Vacation hoodie. Let's face it, sometimes the best stories are the ones that make your skin crawl. So head over to the True Story FM merch store at truestory.fm/merch. Browse our collection, find your perfect design, and embrace your own parasocial creep today. truestory.fm/merch.
Love it.
Celebrating the Oxford comma. That, I think, was the real high point of that script.
Bringing in the Oxford comma always is the way to go.
Did you see the new bit of art that is in there from this weekend? Well, it's kind of a mashup, but I'm going to start an entire line of national park warning signs. Oh. And this one is otters wake up and choose violence. And it's an otter with a spiked mace.
Oh, my goodness.
But I'm going to do wolves and beavers and raccoons because I watched again and reviewed hundreds of beavers this weekend.
Gotcha. Okay.
Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, my God. That movie is bonkers.
Yeah, it's on my watch list. I've been hearing about it forever, but just have not watched it yet. One day.
Okay. One day. Sequels, Andy. I mean, you haven't seen the others. The other.
No, but I'm definitely curious now. Creep 2, when this premiered, it was pretty short right after this started playing that Duplass said, we're going to make a sequel. We're going to make a sequel to this. They and then he said, and it's going to be a trilogy. We're going to make a whole trilogy of this. It took a little longer to get the sequel off the ground than intended, but they did finally, with their schedules and everything, get it out there and everything. And it premiered in 2017, and then they've still been talking about the third one. As of 2020, they were struggling trying to come up with a concept because they said they wanted to be, quote, super inspired, which reminds me of the dreaded Jason Bourne entry into the Jason Bourne franchise when both Matt Damon and the director, Paul Greengrass, said, we're not going to do any more unless we're super inspired. And
super inspired, such dangerous language.
Yeah, it is dangerous language.
Yeah.
This year, just actually over the summer, Duplass did announce that they are working on a TV series of this called The Creep Tapes that would follow a different victim in each episode, which seems interesting. It also makes me wonder how far down that road can they tread before it just starts feeling repetitive, because it's the same setup each time. And so I guess that's what I would wonder, how are they going to change it? And maybe if I watch Creep 2, I would have an answer as to okay, this is how they go from story to story to make it different. But I'm curious what that show is going to be like when it finally shows up.
Yeah, I I'm struggling to figure out if I would watch it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, okay, how are you going to make that interesting enough? I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm guessing because Duplass has had such success with Netflix and working with them. I'm wondering if it's if Netflix is going to, no, it's Shudder. They're going to air it on Shudder.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well,
I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
I am really curious about the second one. And, I'll check. I feel like I'll check it out just to see if mumblecore can handle the weight of sequels. Right.
Yeah,
I guess that's the big question. I was satisfied at the end of this movie. I didn't need to go anywhere else. And,
yeah. Right.
And so that's why I feel like I'm less motivated to see a sequel. Interesting.
Yeah.
Case. How did it do at award season? Did it get any acknowledgement?
It had 4 wins with 3 other nominations. At the Sitges Catalonian International Film Festival, it won the special mention at the Oficial Fantastic Panorama. And at the Chicago International Film Festival, it was nominated for the Audience Choice Award, but it lost to 4 films that apparently all won together: On Beauty, Red Army, The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared, and The Imitation Game. At South by Southwest, it was nominated for the Visions Audience Award, but lost to Yacona. At the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, Mark Duplass was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Kurt Russell in Bone Tomahawk. He, however, won at the Fright Meters and over at the iHorror Awards, where it also won the Best Indie Horror Film. So it found its audience, and it seemed to do well in some of those circles.
What was that? What was that award called?
The iHorror Awards.
What award?
iHorror. iHorror.
Oh.
Did
I just thought,
sound like I'm saying iHorror?
Yeah, what a weird award to have named yourself that.
It's like iRobot, but it's iHorror.
Yeah, iHorror. Okay,
horror is not an easy word to say. Like, we just have to
doing fine.
horror.
How to do at the box office. This is, because it's indie, they publish all their numbers and it's very easy to track.
Yeah, I shouldn't have gotten my hopes up. We finished our Ghost Stories series where I was a complete failure, and I was like, okay, surely moving forward now I'll be great. But no, this series was as much a bust as the last one. I thought for sure this 2015 film would have some information, but alas, I forgot it fell into the mumblecore period of ultra-low budget projects, and because of that, there's nothing out there. The only thing I could find is that after a successful festival run, it had a theatrical release June 23rd, 2015, but that's it. Bummer.
Wow. That's a straight up goose egg. Like,
yeah, it is.
Nothing. Usually you have something.
Yeah, I might have a little something, but nothing with this one.
Wow. Well, clearly now that we've covered it, they're going to write with the budget information because nobody wants to be on the APFM spreadsheet with a goose egg.
Yeah, I think Mark looks at it
filmmaker.
regularly, and I think he's going to contact me probably pretty soon.
I'm sure. All right.
Yeah.
So at least that's coming. Well, I had a great time with this movie. I'm really glad we got it on the list. And I feel lucky that this one chance this season to add a found footage movie to our list actually worked out, I feel like, in our favor.
I thought so. It was a fun one. I'm glad you picked it. I had a fun time with it. I do have issues with it, but largely it's a film I had a great time with and would watch again. So
yeah,
nice.
If it had been any worse, I would have tried to gaslight you and tell you that you picked it.
Is that where we are now?
Yeah, but I'll own it today.
Yeah,
I picked it and it was good.
There you go. I see how it works. All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, kicking off a short return to our Soviet sci-fi series. Vladimir Chebotaryov's and Gennady Kaczynski's. Jesus Christ. Vladimir Chebotaryov's and Gennady Kaczynski's 1961 film, Amphibian Man. Chebotaryov.
I think that's it. I think it's Chebotaryov.
Vladimir Chebotaryov's and Gennady Kaczynski's 1961 film, Amphibian Man.
Excellent. That was great.
So that was something.
All right, here we go. Do it. Do your worst.
Sorry. I have I was not even thinking that I had to do anything. Hold on. All right. It was a sunny day in the park, but there was nothing bright about the scene I stumbled upon. Aaron, the poor sap, was lying there by the lake, his body hacked to pieces. As a documentary producer, I've seen my fair share of messed up things, but this was something else entirely. Oops, my phone is going off. I started digging, trying to piece together what could have led to this gruesome end. Witnesses were scarce, but one lady swore up and down she saw a werewolf lurking around the park that day. A werewolf, can you believe it? I thought I'd heard it all, but this case was shaping up to be a real head-scratcher. As I followed the trail of clues, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever did this was some kind of mad genius. I mean, who pulls off an axe murder in broad daylight and gets away with it? It's the kind of twisted brilliance that you can't help but admire, in a messed up sort of way. But then I realized it's not just the criminal masterminds who have a knack for the unexpected. The folks over at the Next Reel's family of film podcasts have been blowing minds with their fresh takes on cinema for years now. And get this, they're looking for new members to join their ranks. So if you're the type who appreciates a good mystery and loves to dive deep into the world of film, you might just be the perfect fit for the Next Reel's membership program. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you'll get access to a treasure trove of exclusive content, ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, and a community of fellow film lovers that'll make you feel right at home. It's like being part of an elite squad of cinema detectives, working together to unravel the secrets behind your favorite movies. With extended episode editions and private Discord channels, you'll be able to immerse yourself in the investigation like never before. So what do you say? Are you ready to join the hunt for cinematic truth? Head over to truestory.fm/join, look for the Next Reel Film Podcast, the Next Reel's family of film podcasts, and sign up today. And who knows, maybe you'll even help crack the case of Aaron's murder while you're at it. The Next Reel's family of film podcasts, where movie lovers go to unlock the mysteries of cinema.
We're all sleuths now.
I know.
I like that you pick up right after the movie ends. The hacked up body in the park. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad we're the client for that ad read. Yes. Casper mattresses. After you find a hacked up body, right. Get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, right.
Letterboxd, Andy. You know Letterboxd. Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our HQ page over there. And today, we're going to rank it. Now, you didn't know this, but mumblecore has its own subset of stars for you to take from. So other mumblecore movies that you're going to take stars from to give to this. It's finite. Also finite.
Interesting. Well, I had a good time with this. I did have issues as we shifted into that last section, so that dropped it a little bit, but I still enjoyed the characters and I enjoyed what they did with it. So, I'm going to say 3.5, and I feel that's a fine place to be with this one.
I struggle a little bit with that 3 or 4 because, no half stars. It's definitely a heart for sure. And I think I have to sit at, it's a good movie. I'll watch it again. It's 3 stars and a heart.
Yeah. I was torn on the 3 or 3.5. I couldn't have gone up to 4, but I did have a fun time. And I think I'm fine at 3.5. I still really enjoyed it. So, well, that'll average to 3.25, which will round up to 3.5 over on our Letterboxd account, which is at the Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about Creep? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Okay. I know what you're already doing, and it's funny. So I'm going to go first because it's not.
Go for it.
This is a 4-star review from Paul Thomas. Mark Duplass is so great in this. He's not a psycho like you see in many horror movies or thrillers where the filmmaker has a linear view of insanity. Instead, Duplass encompasses the personality of someone who just feels off, someone who gives you the creeps, but you can't fully explain why. Their barometer for appropriateness is a little off. Their mannerisms are objectively innocuous, yet surprisingly threatening. Their mannerisms are objectively innocuous, yet subjectively threatening. What makes Creep so brilliant and eerie are the details to make the killer that person we are much more likely to meet in public. Not a psycho who screams he's going to kill, but rather the guy who talks to you a little too long about things that don't feel right and gives you unexplained chills. We don't need to do a podcast on it anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that says a lot about this film.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Well, I've got a 4.5 by Todd, who you might have seen it because it's the most it's the most popular of the reviews. Let me be clear about this. In no context will I ever videotape someone's tubby time for them.
It's so yours.
Just laying it out there. Yes, thank you, Todd.
I actually, just one more bonus from Siobhan, 5 stars and a heart. I hate that in so many ways, this is the role that Mark Duplass was born to play. I will say on this movie, there are some good one-line reviews. Like if that's what you're looking for, Letterboxd delivers. So
yeah, a lot
to
of
that
fun.
I say, thanks, Letterboxd.